In this video, I'm going to address a popular moral dilemma. It's the trolley problem. And most of us have heard of it. It's where there's a trolley heading down a track, and it's going to hit a fork and either uh, kill one person that is inescapably stuck to the track, or on the other side, it's going to kill 5 people. And typically it's headed for the 5 people, and you have to sort of determine whether it is morally acceptable or even morally obligatory to flip the switch and kill the one person instead. And the utilitarian response might be that yes, you morally should flip a switch because it is better that just one person die than 5 people die. And of course, that reduces the moral question to one of quantity. You just have to do the math. Um, and the reason I wanted to talk about this is because the way that you solve these problems, well, for one thing, the range of permissible solutions is determined by the moral framework that you are using. I described that previous solution as utilitarian. The point of view that we're using here, or that I'm using, is the Christian, or more specifically, the Catholic moral tradition. One of the biggest thinkers would be St. Thomas Aquinas, who enunciated it most fully. One of the more recent, powerful, I guess, restatements of the Catholic moral tradition is the encyclical Veritatis Splendor by Pope St. John Paul II. And in it, he actually specifically denounces the error of consequentialism. So what he means by consequentialism is the judgment of moral actions based on their consequences. So if the consequences are good, or good enough, then you can choose an evil if you intend something that is good and achieve some great good. And this is just another way of saying that the ends justify the means. And for Christianity, to quote St. Paul, the Apostle, we may never do evil that good may come of it. I think what he says is, let no one say of us that we do evil that good may come of it. In other words, you may never choose an evil of any kind directly and intend an evil action, regardless of how many people you're going to save, or the mathematical discrepancy between one choice and another. So that sort of nullifies the another like scenario, the ticking time bomb scenario, where a bomb is going to blow up in a crowd somewhere, and in order to save everyone, to find out where the bomb is, you have to morally compromise yourself by, let's say, torturing a child, or even torturing a villain, torturing anyone, which, again, St. John Paul II describes as an intrinsic evil. You may not do that evil in order to save any number of people. So that's a hard teaching, but that's what it is. And the reason is the distinction that Catholicism makes between the consequences of a moral decision and its object. So what Catholicism has in mind is always, first and foremost, the spiritual well-being of humanity, and of the individual specifically. And what keeps you blameless in a moral decision from the Catholic point of view is the object, as opposed to the consequences. And if you choose to kill an innocent in order to save people, you have chosen an intrinsic evil, and in a sense murder, because of some good consequences, and that is completely unacceptable. So as far as this trolley problem here, one option within the range of permissible options would be to do nothing. It's in a way, it's an insoluble problem. It is a dilemma. And so it would be permissible to do nothing. Because another point about these dilemmas is that we have to remember that they are not real. They are theoretical, they are imaginary, and this is a closed reality that excludes the possibility of any, unknown elements. It excludes, I guess, first and foremost, the intervention of God, but also the limits of human awareness of the situation. How many times have people compromised themselves morally in order to save someone or accomplish some good act when it turns out that they didn't need to? There was some unknown factor that made it to where they actually didn't need to compromise themselves, and things were maybe going to be okay anyway, or some other force was going to intervene. And so, again, in these scenarios like this, it portrays a drastically oversimplified version of reality that we would never encounter in reality, which is just more complicated and allows for more forces at work. But to get back to Catholic moral theory itself, and the distinction between the consequences of an act and the object of a choice, and to offer further guidance on how you would deal with these situations, because again, the whole purpose of thinking about these things is to understand how to deal with real life applications. You deal with these difficult problems, and then you come away with maybe a better sense for how to actually deal with real life problems that aren't exactly like this. So to get to the nuances of permissible options, we have to kind of get more specific and say that, in this visualization, your hand is going to be on the lever, and if you intervened, it would be to flip a switch. Now, the important point here is that the object of that act in itself is morally neutral. There's nothing immoral about flipping a switch and redirecting a trolley. So that's important because the thing that you may never do that we were just talking about is to choose an evil. And here you're not being asked to directly murder someone. You're being asked to flip a switch that has multiple consequences. And what that brings into the picture is the law of double effect. You're sort of slightly removed from the act of killing. And what you're doing is flipping the switch, and then that is going to result in someone dying. But you don't, or it's possible to, do that without ever directly intending or choosing the death of either the one or the five. And so what that means is that when, according to Catholic morality, when you're presented with something that is subject to the law of double effect, for example, you flip the switch and that's what you intend to do, and maybe you have in mind the saving of the one person, but you're never intending and not directly choosing to kill the five, then that is also morally permissible. So, when you're presented with a situation where you, aren't asked to directly choose an evil. So if you were given a gun or told that you had to, it's a little grotesque, but to strangle the one person in order to save the five, then that's out of the question. But that's not what's happening here. Because in order to do something directly like that, then you would actually have to directly orient your will towards the death of the person that you were killing. You are actually killing. But under the law of double effect, you are choosing to switch, to flip the lever, and that has multiple consequences. And so you are, in a way, permitted to do that, because that is, the action itself is not an intrinsic evil. So one of the outcomes here, or I suppose real life application of this kind of reasoning. And although here in this, this theoretical imaginary scenario, it seems like these are, in a way, silly nuances, or just kind of splitting hairs when the outcome is the same and you're still, in a sense, responsible for certain deaths. When this kind of dilemma is brought into play is, for example, in abortion. And what you're presented with sometimes in these debates is, a situation where the mother is going to die if she carries the baby to term, but the baby it's already been determined that the baby is going to die. And so it's this situation that you're presented with where it's either directly, remove, kill the baby, or let them both die. And again, that's a horrible dilemma. And one of the things to say about that is that, according to people who know about these things, that's actually much more rare, almost unheard of, that kind of a situation that truly, puts doctors in that kind of a position. But granted the possible reality of a situation like that, the reason that Catholic doctors could not kill that baby, could not perform an abortion even in those circumstances, and would, in a sense, have to let things happen and save, either or both to whatever extent that they can, is because performing an abortion is the object of that act is to kill. And there's really no way around it. There's no way to carry something like that out without directly intending the death of the unborn child. And so again, that's the situation where it's not a question of double effect, where the thing that you're doing is morally neutral and happens to have multiple evil outcomes, so that you have the opportunity to sort of choose the lesser evil if you wish. Doctors aren't presented with that option, because in order to perform an abortion, save the mother, you have to directly take the life of the unborn child. And so, what was in theory kind of a silly nuance, comes into very, very important real life distinctions. So I'm going to leave it at that. If you have any other moral questions or dilemmas that you would like to see sort of dissected here, feel free to leave it in the comments.